Good afternoon and welcome back to Word Alive with Elder Mike. It is a pleasure to be here again. Now, I don't know if it's actually morning when you're or afternoon when you're watching, but it's afternoon right now, so good afternoon to you. It is truly a blessing to be before you, and I look forward to the word that we have for you today. It really comes from at True North Church over in Mullica Hill. We're finishing up a series over there on the benefit of doubt. The benefit of doubt, and it's, I think, a great topic, one that really I don't think I've heard talked about much in churches. I don't know if we're concerned that people are going to know that we doubt, because God knows that we doubt, right? God's not worried about the fact that we're doubting. God's not surprised by the fact that we doubt. So I don't know why, but we don't talk about doubt a lot. But in this series, we've certainly looked at the fact that there are some benefits to doubt, and as it should be. Whenever you look at a word in depth, there are certain things that God speaks to individuals that are there as well, above and beyond what's being preached. And there are a couple of things, and there's a pattern that as I started looking into the benefit of doubt more independently, that I saw a pattern emerging on how doubt is really a good thing for us. That doubt, when prepared for properly and responded to properly, will not just bring you back to where you were before the doubt, but you'll see growth out of the doubt. That doubt will lead to growth if you are prepared for it and you're preparing for it before it comes. And if you are, respond properly in the time of doubt, you will actually have growth that comes out of your doubt. And, I don't know if we have any runners out there, but I do like to run. I don't know if I necessarily would say I like to run, but I recognize my need to run, because it's I guess the favorite form of exercise that I have to keep the heart rate up and to stay in good shape. And I look at the fact that running actually gives me this good image of doubt and how it can benefit us. Because I don't know if we do have any runners out there. I'm sure you've realized if you've run for any period of time, that there are certain days when you wake up and you start running and your legs feel fresh and your legs feel good, and you're running, you go, you know what, I'm going to crush this today. And you power through it and you get through it pretty easily, and you got a nice kick at the end and everything's feeling good. And there are other days that, I don't know about you, but for me, there are some days where I start out and I'm already doubting if I can make it. The legs just feel heavier. They feel kind of sluggish. It feels like a little bit of a strain to run. And some of those days I'm kind of like, man, I don't know if I can make this today. Because there's doubt, right? And in all areas of our life, there's going to be doubt, as well as our faith. And there is a benefit to doubt, though, because the thing is, all those days that I have doubt, and the thing is, because I have been training, because I've been running, there have been many times that I've run. Usually what I do is I live right by Cooper Hospital, and I run from Cooper Hospital to the Ben Franklin Bridge, which is about a mile, and then it's maybe 3/4 of a mile up to the top of the Ben Franklin Bridge and back down again. And so there are certainly some times where I'm leaving, I'm like, I don't know if I can make it. But then as I'm running, I'm like, you know what, Mike, you did this 2 days ago. If you did this 2 days ago, you didn't get in that much worse a shape today than you were 2 days ago. If you did it 2 days ago, you can do it now. And that mindset of recalling the fact that I've been through it before, definitely helps me. And not only that I've been through it before, but there have been times that I doubted before, and I still made it, and I still made it back with plenty of energy left, a little fuel in the tank. I didn't die. I didn't end up laying down on the ground when I crossed when I finished, right? So it gives me that courage. Okay, I know I doubted before. And even though I doubted before, I made it through it fine. If I did it 2 days ago, I can do it now. So that's one benefit of doubt, is just that when we come through the doubt and we can reflect back on it, it gives us strength for the next time we doubt. One of the other benefits of doubt too is that that doubt that I have keeps me more focused on preparing. So if I know that I'm going to have doubts some morning, I make sure I get a good night's sleep the night before I run. I make sure that I'm eating certain things the night before I go to bed. I make sure I drink a lot of water before I go to bed at night because I run first thing in the morning, right? So I prepare myself knowing that I'm going to need everything in me to power through the doubt if this is one of those days, right? So the preparation that doubt puts in me, the focus that doubt puts in me to prepare for the run is a benefit of doubt, right? So there is this preparation that if we prepare will help us through our doubt in a way that causes us to grow. One of the other benefits of doubt is, right, so there may be a week where I'm running, and I started out actually at about 2.5 miles. I'm up to about 3.5 miles now. But after I run that 2.5 miles, I was like, you know what? You've been doing 2.5 miles for like 3 weeks now. There have been days when you doubt you can make it, but you've made it every time. So what's another 1/4 mile, right? So now instead of doing 2.5 miles, I'm doing 2 3/4 mile. Once I do 2 3/4 mile, there's some days I doubted the 2 3/4 mile, but you know what? You made it through. So you know what? It's time to bump it up to 3. So as we see what we can do, it allows us doubt when we come through. It allows us to stretch our faith. In fact, I would argue this, that if you don't doubt, chances are you're not doing everything you ought to be doing. Because if I never doubt it, you know what that means? That means I'm running a comfortable distance that's not pushing me, that's not straining me, that's not helping me to get stronger and better. That's not building up my lung capacity, that's not building up my heart rate, right? So if you're not having any doubt, I would say it's a bad thing because of this. You're not pushing yourself to the limits you can. You're leaving a lot on the table if you never push yourself to a point where you have some doubt. So there are definitely benefits to doubt, but what we want to focus on today is how we grow through our doubt. And we grow through our doubt by, number one, I already addressed a little bit, preparing for the doubt. What we do in our good season, what we do when we're feeling well, what we're doing well, what we do when we're feeling strong affects our ability, the outcome when we do have doubt. So number one is the preparation for the doubt will help us to grow when we come out of it, and our response to the doubt will help us to grow when we come out of it. So this is the process here. I'm going to walk you through it, and we're going to do it all from the life of Peter, and we're going to focus on one specific life of Peter. We're going to focus on boat scenes. We are going to focus on boat scenes from Peter's life to see how doubt can actually help us to grow if we prepare for it beforehand and we respond properly to it in the midst of it. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning when Jesus called Peter. And we're actually going to go back a little bit before that, because we're going to start with, right, I said it all starts with preparation, preparing for the doubt. So how did Peter start preparing for his doubt? And if we look at Luke chapter 4, and we're going to begin at verse 38, it says, Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon. Simon will then be called Peter, right? Now, Simon's mother, I'm just going to refer to him as Peter right from the beginning, so we're just using one name throughout. It says Simon in here, but Simon becomes Peter, so we're just going to call him Peter so it's consistent throughout. Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Peter. Now, Peter's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So Peter begins his preparation by having Jesus over to his house, by inviting Jesus into his life. Peter has already begun the preparation for getting through his season of doubt. And how we prepare for our seasons of doubt is to invite Jesus into our lives, not just into our Sundays, not just into our church, but to invite him into our homes, invite him into our jobs, invite him into our recreation, invite him into everything that we do. When we invite Jesus into our life, we are preparing in advance for the doubt that's going to come down the line. So that's the first thing. So that what happens now, when Peter actually gets called, we're going to see more doubt in Peter, because Jesus gets into Peter's boat and he asks him to put out just a little bit, and Jesus teaches from his boat for a little while. Now keep in mind, Peter has already seen Jesus heal his mother-in-law. And so then when he's done teaching, he said to Peter, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Now here you go. Here comes doubt again. Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything." Right? So there's doubt there, right? Jesus is saying, go out into the deep water and put down your net. And Peter is saying, I'm an experienced fisherman. If I didn't catch anything, casting my net over the side of the boat all night long, I'm less likely to catch it now that the sun has come up, now that it's warming up. The fish are going to go deeper down. I'm less likely to catch it. So we have the doubt there, okay? So Peter has prepared, okay, by inviting Jesus into his home. And because he invited Jesus into his home, and he got to see Jesus perform that miracle, now what happens is he has some doubt. You're telling me to let down my nets. But all my experience is telling me that's not going to work. But how does he finish that sentence? He says, but because you say so, I will let down the net. So we have the preparation. He invited Jesus into his home, and he got to see Jesus perform a miracle. So now when he doubts what Jesus tells him to do, he says, but because you told me, but because I've seen you heal my mother-in-law, because I know that you know things and can do things that I don't understand, even though it makes no sense to me, I'm going to put down my net. So the response, he responds based on what he knows about Jesus. He doesn't respond based on what he knows about the world. What he knows about the world is, I'm not catching any fish today. What he knows about the world says, I'm not catching any fish today. But what he knows about Jesus is he heals. There's something special about him. He knows some things. He has some power, right? So he lets down his net. And the result of him letting down the net is that they catch so many fish that their nets begin to break, and they've got to bring over now other fishermen to help them haul in all this bountiful fish, right? So now Peter is going to experience some growth. Now, the question is, we want to see Peter grow through this experience. So how did Peter see himself before this experience happened? Because when Simon Peter saw the miraculous catch of fish, when he realized that the power that Jesus had, Simon Peter saw this and he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." So here he is, the response, the growth, the change. He went from unworthy to called. Because after he says, "I'm unworthy," he says, Jesus said to Peter, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So they pulled up their boats on the shore, left everything, and followed him. So his growth, right? Because he prepared by inviting Jesus into his house, because he responded properly by listening to Jesus even when it made no sense, he went from unworthy to called. Imagine having growth like that. And it came what? It came from a season of doubt. A season on the water in doubt. He went from unworthy to called. And so here we go. Now, here's the thing. Now his preparation for his next growth actually begins at the time of the calling, right? He begins his preparation for his next growth because what does he do? He pulls his boat up. He leaves everything behind and he follows Jesus. That's how we prepare for our next doubt, right? We spend time with Jesus. We leave behind the things of the world and we follow the things of God. We follow the way that Jesus taught. We walk with him day in and day out. So that begins his preparation for his next doubt. But there's so much more. Because he has taken the time, because he has committed to walking with Jesus day to day, he sees these incredible miracles. He sees Jesus forgive a man's sins and help this paralyzed man, tells him, "Get up, take your mat, and walk." And the man gets up, takes his mat, and walks. He gets to see this miracle. He gets to see a centurion come to Jesus. And the centurion comes to Jesus, and without even going to the man's house, without even seeing the person that needs healing, he heals without even being in the presence of the person. He gets to see, because he's walking with Jesus day to day, he gets to see Jesus raise a widow's son from the dead. He gets to see Jesus confound the Pharisees and the Sadducees with all their knowledge and their education, that they cannot trap Jesus in anything. They get to sit and listen to him teach the power and the purpose that he taught with. And then these miracles, they get to see him heal a leper. Not only heal a leper, but heal a leper by touching the leper, which was unheard of in this day. The compassion that he had, the power that he had, the knowledge he had. Why? Because they prepared, because they walked with him day by day. And in the same way, that's how we prepare. We invite him into our lives, and then we walk with him day by day. And we get to see the miraculous power that he has. We get to see the change that he makes in our lives, so that when the season of doubt comes, we know where to come with the problem. And so we see here now in the next one, again, Jesus and Peter on a boat together. And it says one day, this is going to be in Luke chapter 8, beginning at verse 22. It says, one day Jesus said to his disciple, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into the boat and set out. Now here's the thing. Again, more preparation. They're following Jesus day to day, and they follow him onto the boat. So the situation that puts them in doubt, they got into that situation by following Jesus. Our doubt is going to have different tracks. If we get into trouble, if we have doubt, or we run into a challenging situation because we're following Jesus, it's going to have a different outcome than we get into trouble because we're following our flesh, because we're following the things of the world, right? It says that that blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It doesn't say everybody who's persecuted is blessed, but those who are blessed for who are persecuted for righteousness' sake are blessed. So when we get into trouble because we're following Jesus into something, we're going to grow through it. We're going to experience growth, and we're going to come out of it better than we went into it. So the preparation, they're walking with Jesus, they're following him, and that's where they get into trouble, right? Because they're on their way over across the lake, and as they're crossing the lake, a storm comes up on the lake, right? And the boat is getting battered. They're thinking that the boat is getting ready to sink. They're probably thinking, okay, what can we throw overboard to lighten the boat? And in their panic, and right, there's this moment of doubt. There's this moment where they're afraid they're going to die. They're on a boat with Jesus, but they forget themselves, and they think literally that they're going to die. So there is doubt there. So we see that the preparation has been there so far. Now, what's the response? The response wasn't to try and make it back to land. The response wasn't trying to lash the boat together themselves. The solution wasn't them trying to figure out what to do. They went and got Jesus. Because they had walked with him all that time, they had enough faith in his power. They said, you know what? The only one that can get us out of this is Jesus. So it says, the disciples went and woke up Jesus, who was sleeping in the back of the boat, saying, Master, Master, we're going to drown. So Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters, and the storm subsided, and all was calm. So again, we see it. We're seeing. Are you seeing the pattern? Are you starting to see it? They're spending time with Jesus. They're following Jesus. They respond properly by going to Jesus when the problem comes up, and Jesus calms the storm. And then there's the payoff. Then there's the growth, right? It says, in fear and amazement, they asked one another, who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him. So we see they go now. Peter has gone from unworthy to called, and now he has gone from being just called to being faith-filled, right? So he's going from called to faith-filled. So he has taken another step in his journey where he's not just called, he's not just following, but he's got the faith to go to Jesus with any issue that might come up. And we're going to see how this, keep in mind, this is a storm that they're in, right? And Jesus has brought them through the storm. And we're going to see in our next step in Peter's growth, we are going to see yet another storm. We're going to see how their experience in this storm that they went through, and they were probably wondering, why do I have to go through this storm? You know why they had to go through this storm? Because there was another storm coming down the line, and Jesus needed to show them that they had nothing to fear. So as we move on, again, we're going now into Peter's third stage of growth here that comes through his doubt. And we see here now, this is a very well-known story of when Peter walks on the water, right? So Peter has been walking again. He has continued to walk with Jesus. He has continued experiencing things. He has allowed Jesus to bring him through that last storm. So the preparation has been strong. But how is the response? Let's look at one more piece of preparation. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. Again, we see they're going to end up in a doubtful situation, but they're in that situation because they were being obedient to what Jesus told them to do. I'm telling you, that's preparation. If you're consistently doing what Jesus is telling you to do, you're going to grow through your doubt because you're doing it under his direction. So now again, though, here we have Jesus sending the disciples out. Why he'd like to send out disciples into boats that were going to fall into storms, I don't know. But so here now they find themselves. Now Jesus is not in the boat with them this time, but yet they're going across the lake, and again a storm comes up on the water. And what I find interesting is the storm is pushing them back to where they came from. So I kind of feel like a logical place, right? If a storm was pushing me back to where I came from, and I'm thinking, how do I survive this? You know what I would probably figure, let's turn around, let the storm blow us back to land. When we get back to land, we'll dock, and then we'll go again when the storm passes. However, they don't do that. They don't turn around and run for shallow water. They don't turn around and run for harbor because of the storm. They continue to push on through the storm. And I believe with all my heart, the reason they were able to push on through the storm and not turn around and retreat is because of that last storm they went through. Because they had seen, Jesus sent us into a boat, there was a storm, and he brought us through it fine. He put us in this boat, he's going to bring us through this storm fine too. So we're going to be obedient. We're going to keep pushing on. And see, that's where I think we block our spiritual growth sometimes, because when we see the tricky situation, when we see the dangerous situation, when we see the uncomfortable situation, we run for safe harbor. And here that all along was an opportunity to doubt a little bit to get a lot of growth later on. And there again, the faith is not perfect here still. Why? Because we're all constantly stretching our faith, and so is Peter on this point. So we know, many of us know the story, that as they're fighting their way through this storm, Jesus comes walking out to them on the water, and Peter, I love Peter, he just boldly and faithfully says, because what do we go? He got faith-filled from his last growth experience, and as he's now faith-filled, he says, Jesus, if you tell me to come to you out on the water, I will do it. Again, here we see he's seeking Jesus' permission first. Again, it's the preparation. It's the preparation. It's that faithful preparation, continuing to seek him, continuing to ask him what she does. So he asks, can I step out on the water? And Jesus says yes. And he takes those steps on the water, that miraculous thing, that thing that defies all logic, even to take a couple of steps on water. But then he gets distracted, and the waves scare him, and the wind scares him, and he starts to doubt, and he starts to sink. But again, we see the response, right? So the preparation good. What's the response once the doubt set in? Once he started to sink, he didn't try swimming back to the boat. He didn't say, hey, John, hey, Philip, throw me a line from the boat. No, he called out to Jesus for help. Again, this is where I think we get ourselves in trouble a lot of times is, instead of those things that we train with our word, we train with our prayer, we train with our service, we train with our praise and worship. But then when the big storm comes, then when we start to sink in the water, instead of leaning on those things, instead of leaning on Jesus, we start leaning on the job, we start leaning on the bank account, we start leaning on the medication, right? Instead of going to Jesus first. Now, if Jesus leads you to the job, if Jesus leads you to the medication, but always go to Jesus first. And we see that's Peter's response. Here he goes to Jesus first. He doesn't try the boat. He doesn't try his comrades on the boat. He says, Jesus, you help me. And we see that Jesus immediately reaches out his hand, lifts him up, and leads him to the boat. And when he gets to the boat, I love the response of the disciples. It says, and when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. So here now we have, because Peter prepared for that doubtful situation before it came, because he spent time with Jesus before it came, because he responded properly by seeking Jesus in the storm, we see he gets a fresh revelation. And this is not just any revelation, it's you are the Son of God. And then we go on to see it's Matthew. No, I think it's actually, is it Luke 14? I think it's Luke 14 where now Peter is, let me see, I think I have it written down here. Matthew 16. It was Matthew 16. That in Matthew 16, Jesus asked the disciples, who am I? Now keep in mind, what did he do? What was declared here when he helped Peter out of the water? You are the Son of Man. And in Matthew 16, now Jesus is asking the disciples, who is it that people say, who is it that you say that I am? And everybody else answers, some say you're Elijah, some say you're the prophet, right? And Jesus says, but who do you say I am? And I love because Peter steps up and Peter says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. So here, the revelation that he received from the storm that caused the doubt, right, becomes foundational to the church. Because Jesus replies, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. This revelation, that he received. For this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. This revelation that Peter states that Jesus is the Son of God is foundational to the church and to his role and to the salvation of billions of people, right? So here we went. Peter went through his doubt. He went from unworthy to called. From his doubt, he went from called to faith-filled. And now from this, he went from faith-filled to foundational. Again, we see progression through the doubt. But we know that Peter was not done with his doubt. That Peter's biggest doubt was yet to come. That he hadn't even seen the worst of his doubt yet. Was we remember that fateful night when Jesus was taken and Jesus was on trial. And here's Peter at the trial trying to keep tabs on what's going on. And people keep coming up to him. They keep saying, you're one of them. You're with him. You're one of his disciples. And Peter, every time he gets accused, more vehemently, more strongly denies knowing Jesus. And that third time that he denies Jesus, he hears the rooster crow and he weeps bitterly. Talk about doubt. The Messiah, the one that you declared as the Messiah, and you've denied him 3 times when he's at his most vulnerable point, right? And he weeps bitterly. But the thing is, again, we look at what's the preparation. The preparation is he didn't walk away. He and Judas both betrayed Jesus that night. We can say Judas's betrayal is worse, but what did Jesus say about people who deny him? If you deny me before man, I'll deny you before God, right? So it's severe, this denial, right? But while Judas killed himself and left himself nothing to work with, Peter continued to stay with the saints. Peter continued to go where Jesus told him to go. So if you've even doubted to the point where you have failed, if you have doubted to the point where you're weeping bitterly, continue to prepare for your future seasons. Continue to walk with Jesus. Continue to stay in the fellowship of your Christian community. Continue to go to church. Continue to praise. Continue to worship. To stay in your word and to pray. Do those things and go those places Jesus told you to go before you disappointed yourself, because he is still with you in those. Because we look at Peter, and I can imagine after denying Jesus 3 times, after walking with all these years, it would be hard to go back and fellowship with those people and be around those people. But yet he continues to do that because he needs the strength that community provides. He needs the strength that Jesus provides. And because he continues to do that, in John chapter 20, we see that Jesus comes to the disciples, and Peter would be there with them, and they receive the Holy Spirit. At that point in time, if he had run, if he had hidden, if he had let himself condemn himself, he would not have received that and the growth that brings. We see that when Jesus rose and he was with Mary at the tomb, he said, "Go tell the disciples, go tell Peter and the disciples to go to Galilee." And it's key. We may overlook that, but he says, "Go to Galilee." Because Peter's next boat experience is going to be in Galilee. And it says here, we're going to look at John chapter 21 for Peter's last growth experience through doubt. And keep in mind, he's been continuing to prepare. Even after Jesus has been crucified, he's continuing to prepare for his doubtful seasons by staying in the fellowship of his Christian brothers and sisters and by continuing to go where Jesus told him to go. So it says, afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of what? The Sea of Galilee. Where did Jesus tell Peter to go? He told him to go to Galilee. So Jesus finds it. So Jesus went where he told Peter to go. If Peter had decided to do something else, he wouldn't have been there. He wouldn't have been prepared for what was going to come in the form of growth through his doubt. And so as they're in Galilee and they're fishing on the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus comes and stands on the beach. And when Peter realizes that it's Jesus on the beach, he immediately jumps into the water and swims to Jesus. Again, what do we see how Peter is always preparing? He's always running toward Jesus. He's always seeking Jesus. He's always obeying and following what Jesus told him to do. So he's so excited that he swims over to the beach and he's sitting there and he has a nice fish fry on the beach with Jesus and the disciples. And then after he does this, so here we have the preparation was going where Jesus told him to go. Excuse me. And when he saw Jesus, he ran to him eagerly. And as a result, after the fish fry on the beach, Jesus says to him 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" And each time, just as Peter had denied Jesus more vehemently, each time he was asked, Jesus asks him now 3 times, "You love me?" And each time he answers more strongly, "You know that I love you." So here we have the redemption of Peter. Why? Because he continued to prepare, because he continued to follow Jesus' instructions, even when Jesus wasn't around in his physical form watching over him anymore. And he gets this restoration. But not only does he get restoration, he gets growth. Because he went from unworthy to faith-filled. Then he went from faith-filled to foundational. And now he's going to go from foundational to called. Because after this fish fry, after the restoration, Jesus continues to give him his assignment, feed my sheep. And here we see the growth of a man. And then we see the growth of man in situations that we would be in and we would say, why do I have to go through this? Situations where we would go, God, stop this. Jesus, get me out of this. But because he went through them, because he prepared for them beforehand, and because he responded properly in them, we see these 4 different levels of growth that come out of these 4 different doubtful situations. And that's the way our God works. He makes it plain to us. We just gotta get in our word. We gotta know it. We gotta see it, and we gotta really incorporate in our lives. So if you're wanting to know, I'm gonna summarize it all for you right now. Prepare for your doubtful situation before it comes. When the seas are calm, spend time with Jesus. While the seas are calm, get to know his nature. While the seas are calm, go where he tells you to go. While the seas are calm, do what he tells you to do. That's the preparation, is spending time with Jesus. That way you can get to see the power that he has. You can get to experience the love that he has. You can get to experience the faithfulness that he has through that preparation of time together in the good times. We often overlook the importance of the good times when the bad times hit. But it's those good times that prepare us for it if we're doing the right things in them. And then the second thing is how we react. We see that in all of Peter's reactions, in his times of doubt, he went to Jesus. He didn't go to his cousin. He didn't go to his brother. He didn't go to his father. He didn't go to his mother. He went to Jesus. He didn't shout out to the people on the boat, "Bring me back in." He called out to Jesus. So if you want to grow in your seasons of doubt, start preparing now for when that season of doubt comes. And when the season of doubt comes, react by going to Jesus, not the things of the world, not the things that your mind tell you are right, but go to Jesus and ask him to direct you on how to come out of that doubtful season. And you will see growth in yourself through your doubt. You will see change in yourself through your doubt. You will see a stretching of your faith through your doubt if you go through it with those 2 simple instructions. Prepare beforehand by spending time with Jesus. And when the crisis comes, don't abandon what got you there. Continue to go to Jesus in the trial. God bless you. I pray that this has blessed you. Have a great day, and never forget that Jesus loves you, and so do we. Have a blessed, blessed day.